Hey guys, welcome back to Falcons Central Radio Show on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman, and joined as usual by my co-host Scott Karasik, and we are back with our good friend Charles McDonald of the Setting the Edge podcast of Bleacher Report NFL 1000 of the Falcoholic, who he is back writing again, writing about the Falcons. That's a weird novelty. And we're going to talk a little bit about the recent Falcons news. Not a whole lot going on, but mandatory minicamp started today. We'll talk a little bit about some roster moves they made. The big news was they had a retirement ceremony for Michael Vick and White. We'll talk about that. And as usual, we will answer your guys' mailbag questions throughout and at the end of the show. So let's get into this thing. As we usually do in this podcast, we get the roster moves that are pretty low-key out of the way first. Any thoughts on any of these roster moves that the Falcons wound up bringing in two undrafted rookies, Marvin Hall and Jack Lynn, and Martin Nafetti, and they wound up cutting Robert Leff, Soma Vaianuku, and Darius English. I know a lot of people out there were hoping that the Falcons were bringing in Dwight Freeney once they saw the news that Darius English was getting cut, but that's not going to happen. But any thoughts on these roster moves?
No. I mean, I think the Affetti move is kind of pointless because he's just going to get cut anyway. And, I mean, Marvin Hall, Jack Lynn, to me, they're camp bodies. Jack Lynn might have a shot, but, I mean, we're talking far, far, far shot to even make the roster.
Yeah, Lynn's interesting to me just because when I was watching Devondre Campbell last year, I think he was the Minnesota linebacker that kept popping to me on film. I'm like, oh, this guy's going to be somebody worth keeping an eye on for next year's draft. But other than that, yeah, these moves aren't really a whole lot. Marvin Hall, might get in the mix in the kickoff returner. Martin Affetti was on the practice squad last year. They signed him to a future contract, cut him right after the draft, and I guess they're bringing him back. So, probably you're right, all camp bodies, but we'll see if any of these guys can sort of emerge and potentially wind up winning a spot in the practice squad or something like that. So let's get into mandatory minicamp. I think everybody was accounted for except for Tack McKinley, who can't show up because of league rules against, whatever quarters, basically Pac-12 schools. If you play in the Pac-12, you can't show up to your team off season because your schools are on the quarter system. But are there any sort of storylines, any sort of news, any sort of reports that you guys are looking forward to hearing about or seeing over the next couple of days? Or are there any key positional battles that you're hoping you get some clarity on? Or is there a position or a free agent that you want the Falcons to wind up scooping up because you feel like they didn't get the job done at that spot the last 4 months of the offseason? Or any of those issues you're looking for this week?
The only position that I guess I'm really interested in following this week would be linebacker, I guess, just because they added Duke Riley, and it seems like he's going to take Devondre Campbell's spot at weak side, and Devondre's going to go strong side. But outside of that, I'm not sure how much you can really take away from this week, and people are going to be, clamoring for takes and analysis, but it's just a few days, and there's no pad, so I would temper your expectations on how much you're actually going to learn from this camp.
I think the only thing you can really learn from minicamp this time of year is injuries and conditioning. Are the guys conditioned and are they healthy? Like, what's his name? Taylor Gabriel's got an ankle injury, and Dantari Poe made weight. Like, to me, those are the storylines, not like, oh, this guy looks good in minicamp. Cool, he's looking great in shorts and a T-shirt. Like, everybody should look great in shorts and a T-shirt.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and I know Evan Burchell had a question about how much stock we put into these minicamp news and whatnot, but it's one of those things where, like, sometimes you hear of guys beginning to emerge at this point in the year, and sort of they are able to carry that over into training camp and into the regular season. I remember many, many years ago, it was around this time of year where people were starting to hype up Harvey Dahl in terms of the competition between him and Keenan Forney going into that 2008 season. And, Dahl wound up having 3 pretty good years in Atlanta as a starting right guard for us. But then there's always plenty of examples of guys that are starting to get hyped this time of year. Everybody's favorite Akron receiver, Bernard Reedy, was like the champion of the world in minicamp. Wound up being on the practice squad or maybe even making the roster if I'm not mistaken, but didn't really do much other than sort of, collect a check for a year and a half before he wound up. I think he's now in Tampa Bay. So, it's one of those things where you can't put too much. At least I don't put too much stock into it until we get to August or September, as opposed to June news and whatnot. All right, let's get into the meat of this show, and that's talking about what went down on yesterday in Atlanta with the Falcons doing a retirement ceremony, whatever you want to call it, for Michael Vick and Roddy White. It was basically they didn't do the whole we signed them to a 1-day contract and they retired as Falcons, but it was they had both those guys go up there and talk. They had Arthur Blank say some words, Todd McClure, Brian Finneran. They had a bunch of veterans. They did my boy Jonathan Babineau dirty because they could have had him have his whole thing happen at the whole thing. They could have gone 3 for 3 for Falcon grades.
Babineau doesn't know if he wants to play or not. So
he's not a player for the Falcons, so they could have given him some shine.
And technically, Roddy White did retire a Falcon because he never played for anybody else.
So
not even in minicamp.
They could have just had Babineau answer a couple of questions. I don't know, but that's my personal cross the bear or whatever. But did you guys check it out? And were there any highlights from that whole thing that you wanted to talk about?
I haven't got a chance to watch it yet. I was in class while it was going on, and I was going to watch it when I got home, but then I started thinking about it. I got too sad, so I didn't watch it.
It's a straightforward retirement ceremony. Like, honestly, it's really just like, hey, Roddy, thanks for playing for us. Hey, Vic, thanks for playing for us. Like, and they Blank talked about how Vic went through some shit and had to basically go to jail and become a new man, and he deserves a second chance. And when you watch it, you're like, yeah, he totally paid his dues. Like, reading that article he wrote, that's really what made me say, you know what? I can forgive Vic. Like, he's basically apologizing for all the shit he did and explaining everything that went through his mind. So for me, I'm glad they did this. It was Blank's call, and I think they're both they're both going to always be remembered as Falcons. So let's keep them that way.
Yeah. I like that. Roddy's career in Atlanta didn't end as probably as well as people wanted it to. Sort of with his play sort of tailing off and sort of having the conflict with the coaching staff, and basically that last year was just sort of a rough year for him. And so to get some closure on that issue, I guess, so to speak, with this whole event, and obviously with Vic, basically having a decade of sort of that being an open wound that I think over time for a lot of people has started to heal, particularly in the last couple of years. Basically since he left Philadelphia and was actually competing against the Falcons. So I think it was good for both of those things to happen. I wasn't expecting the whole Vic thing to go down as quickly as it did. I think it was smart for Blank to try to sneak it through the back door to sort of deflect some of the controversy. Obviously, some people wrote some articles and there was petitions and whatnot about that whole situation. But it's one of those things where it's like I'm glad sort of Blank did it when he did it, and so basically now people are just sort of stuck being like, I don't like that, and it's like, well, too bad it happened, so whatever. I think Charles, if you do check it out, it's pretty straightforward. I thought probably the best part of it was sort of what Todd McClure said about Michael Vick being the king of Atlanta and sort of changing the culture, which I think does sort of summarize his career, and sort of I don't think the Falcons would have had the success under Matt Ryan quite to the degree if Vic hadn't come before him and sort of opened the door for people to actually start to believe that the Falcons could actually be a good team on a consistent basis, which was not really the case for the prior 40 years that the team has existed. So,
I don't know. Vick is he's my favorite football player ever. So, I thought it was so cool that they brought him back, and it sounds like they might even retire both of their jerseys. And I feel like 7 is pretty much unofficially retired anyway, just because the legacy and the weight of what the hell happens from 2001 to 2007. But it's dope to see that whole saga kind of end on a good note. And all these people that are salty at Vick, I get it, but man, it's been 11 years. And he spent 2 years in jail. Get over it. I don't know. And then when he went back, when he went to Philly, he was very open about it. He went back into the community, helped out, and then he balled when he got the chance to start. So I feel like if you're still mad about this 11 years later, you're just kind of full of yourself. That's my take.
Yeah. I'm the same way as Charles. I get, I get why people, I get why some people are upset. If you had the issue with the dogs and whatnot, I get that. It's fine. I'm not mad at anybody who sort of sees what he did with the dogfighting thing as sort of this unforgivable thing. I don't quite agree, but I don't fault anybody for thinking that. It's to me, the people I have a problem with it are the people that are mad at it for football reasons. I just don't get that. Why are you still salty about something that happened on the football field 11 years ago? Let it go. Why? It worked itself out just fine for the Falcons. If you're a Falcon fan, we're better off. I mean, we're better now. So it's what's the big deal? Why are you still holding on to that? But hey, what do I know? Okay, let's talk about. We got some questions involving this whole situation. Evan Birchfield's first question is: do you think the Falcons should or will retire number 7 and number 84?
I wouldn't complain if they retired 84. It seems like players are kind of avoiding it as it is. I also think they should retire 87 for Claude Humphrey because he was the team's first, the team's first true Hall of Famer. But they should retire 84. They should definitely retire 7 just because, 1, the legacy behind it, and 2, I mean, Vick did change the team for the better. There was the idea that the team needs to be better than just a team that can go to an NFC championship game once Vick got done here. It was, we need to go to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think if Blank has his way, and at the end of the day he's the owner, I think he would love to retire both 7 and 84. Just because you saw all the quotes from, or at least I saw all the quotes from Vaughn McClure. He was talking about how Blank has unconditional love for Vick, even though he screwed up in the past. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen, and I think it should happen. I don't think anyone outside of camp bodies has even touched 7 since he left. So you might as well just go ahead and make it official.
Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't Nick Williams. It was the other.
Ben Gideon, is that his name? Gideon?
Yeah.
I think his last name is Gideon.
Some other white receiver we had a couple of years ago that was number 7 for training camp or something. I can't remember. And I feel, wasn't Devin Fuller 84 last year?
He was 87 last year.
Oh, okay.
He was 87.
Okay. Well, I mean, the issue with retiring numbers is I think you can say in name that the numbers are retired, but the problem is because you have 90 guys on your roster, and the league put out this memo 10, 15 years ago that teams can't really retire numbers anymore just because some teams like the Bears, who have 17,000 all-time greats, would run out of numbers and whatnot. So it's just basically you get to a point where you have to ask permission to use the number as opposed to outright banning anybody from wearing it. But I do think both of these numbers have the potential to sort of go into that category, at least for the short term. Maybe the next number 1 pick we use on a wide receiver 5 years from now can be yeah, I'm going to wear 84 because I grew up watching Roddy White or whatever the case may be. But, until then, I don't necessarily see a reason for anybody to wear it.
Well, I mean, the Falcons have, 6 retired numbers now? 10, 31, 57, 58, 60, and then 78. So I was adding, 2 more, 3 more? There's 90 guys on the roster, and they still have people doubling up on numbers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can only do so much.
Yeah. Okay, next question is from Jesse Lalamindre at Fozzy1988 on Twitter. He says, since yesterday was Mike Vick and Roddy White's retirement ceremony, what were your favorite moments from their careers?
For Michael Vick, it will always be that run against the Vikings where he ran so fast and made them look so stupid. And my favorite part of that run was when the 2 Vikings were chasing him. Both had bad angles, and they ran right into each other, and he just skirted right through for the touchdown. That's my Michael Vick moment. My Roddy White moment is more like a collection of plays against the San Francisco 49ers. I want to say in 2011 or 2012. The 49ers were playing in Atlanta. Roddy White forced a fumble. Ryan threw an interception. Then Roddy White chased the dude down, forced the fumble, and then Roddy White went back and caught 5 passes for 80-something yards and the winning touchdown. To me, that's the ultimate Roddy White. That's Roddy White as a Falcon.
Yeah, my favorite Vic moment is the Minnesota run. That is like when he put himself on the map, I think. And then you kind of talk about, maybe we don't really need these stoic, tall pocket passers to just sit there in the pocket. Maybe we can have a guy that can run around a little bit. And Roddy White moment was the touchdown where he just burned Richard Sherman in the Seahawks playoff game.
That was a good one too.
Yeah, he just ran back and started talking shit to him in his face. That was awesome. Because that was like when people were starting to say, "Oh, is Richard Sherman better than Darrelle Revis?" And Roddy put that to bed real quick. And another one was, I think it was the Thursday night game against the Baltimore Ravens. I don't remember what season it was, but Roddy had the game-winning catch, and he had a super obvious pass interference, offensive pass interference on that catch. And me and my friends, we had a bet that week. If the Falcons won that game, because I live in Baltimore, so if the Falcons won that game, then I would bring all my Falcons jerseys to school, and they would have to wear the Falcons jerseys. And if not, then I had to wear a Joe Flacco jersey. And as soon as Roddy scored that touchdown, I started blowing up their phones. And I didn't admit until this past weekend at a cookout at my house that Roddy pushed off. It's been 7 years? That was the first time I admitted that should have been a penalty.
In that Ravens game?
Yeah, that Ravens game.
2010?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he totally pushed off.
Yeah, it was obvious. I think it was Josh Wilson that he pushed off.
But he went like that with his push off, one armed, and it was enough to where the ref would be like, whatever, he's Roddy White at that point in his career. Because it was his 4th straight Pro Bowl season. So at that point for Roddy White, you're like, all right, well, I mean, the dude's a 4-time Pro Bowler. He can have that one.
Yeah, the Ravens push off was a great one. The Sherman touchdown. I'll pick the play that I think Roddy talked about at the ceremony. I'll pick the Haruki Nakamura play against Carolina in 2012, where he sort of, they ran that play action pass as Roddy described it, and Matt Ryan just threw it up, and Haruki Nakamura, the safety for the Panthers, just was doing whatever he was doing, and Roddy made that catch, and I think that set up the game-winning field goal or something like that. So. That was a great play for Vic. It is the Minnesota play. That is the signature play of his career. That sort of highlights what he brought to Atlanta. That sort of ability. I'm sure I could probably go through and find 15 other scrambles of his where he just sort of got outside the pocket and took off. I remember there was one against the Rams in that 04 playoffs where it seemed like he just sort of floated to a 50-yard gain on a scramble or something down the sideline. There's plenty of other ones, but that Minnesota play is certainly the most memorable moment of his career. All right, next question. Evan Birchfield asks, aside from Roddy and Vic, is there any other former Falcon players who should have their jersey number retired?
Jonathan Babinow. That's the only one that can come to mind. Maybe would you guys retire John Abraham's number?
I would say Abraham is probably number 1 on that list. and then Claude Humphrey up there too. Outside of those two, I don't think anybody else really needs a retired number. I love Babineau, but come on, y'all. He wasn't a Hall of Famer. He wasn't this crazy, ridiculous, amazing talent, but he was a player we loved. That'd be like saying, hey, we should retire number 62.
He's here for like 45 years.
Should we retire 62 because Todd McClure started at center for 13 years?
Sure. Go for it.
I love Todd McClure, but, like, I don't think you should retire 62 for him. I also don't think 57 should be retired for Jeff Van Note, but that's because I think offensive linemen are, like, they shouldn't have retired numbers unless they're truly Hall of Fame caliber. And I think the Falcons have had one in their entire existence in Mike Ken.
I just think I just still thought it was kind of dirty that they gave Jack Crawford Babs' number the second that they cut him. That was pretty messed up.
They didn't cut Babs. His contract expired.
Still, same thing.
Yeah. Babineau, the body was still warm in free agency when they gave that number to Jack Crawford. So I'm with you, Charles, on that one. They could have at least waited a year like they did with Roddy last year before giving up his number to anybody. But
we were going to give Jack Crawford 58.
He could have took 90. He could have took any number.
Give him Bierman's old number.
I mean,
Give him who?
Bierman, 71.
70. I would have been fine with that, but Schweitzer already had it.
Who's got Tyson Jackson's number?
99 or 94? Joe Villano.
Yes.
Come on now. Okay. Yeah, sure. All right.
And you couldn't give them 98 with who they were going to draft in the first round. Come on, man.
Okay. All right. They did you wrong, Babineau. Whatever. Yeah, I don't, I would retire Babs. I would retire McClures. I would retire Claude Humphreys. It is what it is. So, yeah, I don't have anybody else to add. When Julio's done, retire his number. When Trufon's done, retire his number. But
you can't retire 21.
Why can't you?
Because if you would have done it, you would have done it already for Dion.
Well, now that you
retire everyone's number, disband the team. I'm fine with that.
Do what Dallas does and don't retire any numbers. Pull them all out of circulation, and then you have to ask permission for that certain number.
Okay, let's go to the next question from Charlie Rogers. Any chance Roddy's a Hall of Famer? In my opinion, he's on the cusp.
I don't think he's even close, honestly. Look, we just saw T.O. struggle for 2 years, and I know it's probably like some semantics, but I don't think
because T.O.'s a dick off the field. That's why he got pushed out. Because honestly, T.O.'s the first ballot guy. Roddy,
the standard for receivers is rising as teams pass more. Mm-hmm. I don't think he has a chance, honestly.
I mean, the fact that Lynn Swan's in the Hall of Fame is kind of bullshit when you look at everybody else that's in the Hall of Fame. Because Lynn Swan isn't anywhere close to pretty much anybody else. He's got rings, cool. Because he's Lynn Swan, team. Whatever. Lynn Swan doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. Good football player, but not great. Roddy is a better football player than Lynn Swan was.
I would put Michael Vick in the Hall of Fame before Roddy White.
I would too, because he left an impact. He left a bigger impact on the game. Without Michael Vick, you probably don't have the Cam Newton or the Jameis Winston types that we have today.
Yeah, I think Ben Albright put it a good way a few months ago. He's like, you can't tell the story of the NFL in the past 15 years without Michael Vick. And if I know his numbers weren't great, especially passing, but I feel like he was just such an important figure to what happened in the past 15 years of the NFL. That alone is enough to get him consideration to me.
I agree. Now Roddy's up there in career numbers in terms of receptions. He's 115, or he's 33rd on his career. He's 36th in receiving yards, 64th in touchdowns. That's not good enough to get in. The only thing that he might be able to claim is that he's got a streak that only two other players have, is that 6 years consecutive, 80-plus catches, 1,100-plus yards, 6-plus touchdowns that he had from 2007 all the way to 2012. That's the only thing he can claim over anybody else. And that's not good enough. Like, hey, I was the most consistent player outside of Torrey Holt and Jerry Rice in my career.
Well, I mean, look, I don't think Roddy's going to get in. I think Charles said it. I think Scott said it as well. It's one of those things where, like, the biggest factors that go in the Hall of Fame is, you know, Pro Bowls and Super Bowl appearances. And Roddy, you know, had a decent amount of Pro Bowls, but not an outrageous amount of Pro Bowls that would make you, you know, you got to get like a 5, 6, 7, 8 Pro Bowls to really sort of solidify yourself as a high-level Hall of Fame candidate. And, you know, without a Super Bowl appearance, it really does help guys a lot because teams, you know, voters want to see you, you know, have that success, that individual success translate into team success. As Charles said, with wide receivers nowadays, we saw it with some of the guys that were big-time stars in the 90s, like James Lofton and Andre Reed and whatnot, where they, you know, Tim Brown as well, they had to wait many, many years to get into the Hall of Fame. And it's just one of those things where as we go along, because it's a passing league, wide receivers are able to put up numbers at a much better rate than sort of previous ones. You know, quarterbacks too, but quarterbacks are always judged by how many rings you got, how many postseason wins you got. So they have other ways of measuring quarterbacks that they don't really have with wide receivers. So they get hurt by the whole passing league thing. And I think a lot of these modern day receivers are going to have a harder time. Even guys like Calvin Johnson and whatnot aren't going to be the sort of slam dunk first ballot Hall of Famers that I think some people think they should be. I don't think Roddy's anywhere close to the conversation. You know, as Scott said, the whole streak thing, like it's a cool stat, but it's really sort of an arbitrary stat because it's just like why 80 catches and not 70 catches? Like if you lower the threshold from 80 catches to 75 catches, then all of a sudden it's like 14 other people join that list. Like Brandon Marshall's right there with Roddy Wright. I don't think many people sit here and think, oh man, Brandon Marshall's a definite Hall of Famer. He's a good receiver, been a top 10 receiver probably most of his career. At his peak was probably one of the 3 or 4 best receivers in the league, similar to Roddy, but that's not really what people are looking at for a Hall of Famer. So
Brandon Marshall's had a better career than Roddy White, by far. Brandon Marshall's a way better football player. He's had 6 Pro Bowls, 1 All-Pro. He's got over 1,000 yards more than Roddy does, and he's played 1 year less than Roddy did when Roddy retired. Brandon Marshall's only played basically 9 years, 10 years, and Roddy played 12. So I mean, Brandon Marshall's a better football player.
I that's fine. You know, my point is that I don't think many people look at Brandon Marshall and be like, oh yeah, he's a definite Hall of Famer. I think they just look at him as a good modern NFL receiver. But not a guy that guy that belongs in the Hall of Fame, like say a Larry Fitzgerald or say like a Calvin Johnson or even an Andre Johnson or T.O. or anything like that. So like I think Roddy's in that next tier of guys. I do think by his career, Roddy White is underrated because he, you know, during his peak years from 2007 to 2010, I don't think he was as highly rated as he should have been. But I don't think that's going to get him into the Hall of Fame. Nor do I feel like, you know, I would, if I was a voter, would I be really pushing for him to be in the Hall of Fame, even given my Falcons bias. Okay, I think that's it for those questions. Let's move on to the other mailbag questions. I know, Charles, this is the point in the show where you usually check out.
Yeah, we've only been on for 30 minutes instead of an hour, so I'll stick around.
Okay, all right. You get the ADD, so I just wanted to check. All right, so Falcons Andy asks, if you could pick one Falcons injury to never happen, what would it be? Would it be a short-term one like Abe in 2012 or Trufant in 2016, or a long-term one like Parade Jerry in his second NFL game?
I'm going to go with John Abraham or Trufant in 16, because I think if the Falcons had Trufant in 16, they win that Super Bowl. I think if they had Abraham in 2012, they win that Super Bowl. Or they at least get to the Super Bowl in 2012. You know, and at least you give Tony Gonzalez, hey, we got you to a Super Bowl, man. That's the best we can do. Like, even if they lose against the Ravens, then at least it's like, all right, well, at least we got Tony Gonzalez to a Super Bowl before he packed today.
I think I would go short term, and the wound is still fresh, but I think I would keep Alex Mack healthy for this entire season and not have him get hurt in the postseason. Just because, like, you saw the difference from the first half to the second half and the way that he was able to move. And I think if he was healthy, I'm not saying that they don't just have complete brain fart at the end like they did, but I do think that they run the ball a little bit more than they did during the game.
Yeah, I'm on the same lines, Charles. I was going to go with Alex Mack, but then I was like, hey, let's go with the guy who everybody seems to hate right now. Let's go with Jake Matthews. If he hadn't gotten hurt in that Chiefs game and sort of still been recovering from that leg injury, ankle, knee, whatever it was, some people have argued that he was a bigger problem in that Super Bowl than any, at least from a player standpoint, than anybody else. So
it was all bad. It was all bad.
I'm not arguing. I'm just saying, like, I've heard many people say it. If we're playing revisionist history and sort of wiping the slate clean on an injury, a healthy Jake Matthews probably doesn't get those two holding penalties at the wrong time and whatnot. So I'll go with that one. All right, Andy's next question is, what are your expectations for Taylor Gabriel in a Shanahan-less offense?
Less touchdowns, about the same amount of yards.
Yeah. Same kind of explosive player. Taylor Gabriel's a good receiver, and I think Sarkisian's offense isn't going to be that different from Shanahan in design. It's going to be different than Shanahan in play call and function in some ways. I think Sarkisian might run the ball a little more. But outside of that, I don't think we're going to see that different of an offense.
Yeah. I was just going to say he had, 7 touchdowns on 39 touches last season. I would definitely expect that touchdown rate to come down, but I do think he'll provide a source of explosive plays.
Yeah, I expect him to get more playing time. I expect him to get more targets this year. Basically like the first half of the season, he's getting 1-2 targets a game or something like that. To me, I don't know if he'll be used quite the same way, because I think because his role was so limited, they could maximize what he did in that role, which was a lot of deeper and intermediate routes. And I imagine if he's going to be playing a lot more, he's going to have a lot more opportunities to sort of dilute his production a little bit with a lot of more short deke and dunk stuff designed to sort of get the ball into his hands. I think we'll see a little bit more RPOs, run pass options in Sarkisian's offense than we did with Shanahan. And I think that works because we have so many good receivers after the catch. And so I do think sort of dialing up the shot plays that were a regular feature of the offense last year, I don't know if we're going to have quite the same frequency of those plays. So I do think for even everybody across the board, you'll see that reflected in their yards per reception coming down a little bit. So I think Gabriel will probably, get down into the 13, 14 range as opposed to what he was last year, where it was just like 18 or something ridiculous or something. So that's my expectations. Okay, Andy's next question is, what will the roles of each interior lineman be for the Falcons defense? Sorry to typecast 4 verts and ignore if we already asked that one.
I'm going to kind of go ahead and go with what I think it'll be, and then I'll let Chuck go. But I think in the base we're going to see a lot of Poe and Jarrett, or Poe and Hageman. And then I think once we see the nickel, we'll see a lot of Jarrett and what's his name? I'm not blanking. Adrian Claiborne. We'll see those two on the interior on the nickel packages. And then we'll see guys like Shelby and Upshaw rotate in. And at strong side end, I think we're going to see Jack Crawford play there majority of the time. I think that's his best fit in the defense, and I think that's why they brought him in. And I think we'll see Crawford and Shelby at that strong side and in the base a lot.
Charles?
Yeah, I think you just kind of have to look at it like there are three, I guess, types of body that the Falcons have on the defensive line. This is like where the league is going. So you have like your true defensive tackles. So guys are going to play from nose to three technique on a daily basis, or not on a daily basis, on a snap to snap basis. And so you have like Dom Poe, Grady Jarrett, Rashid Hageman there. Then you have like your flex guys. They're going to play 3 to 6 or 7, and sometimes maybe even 1 if they get a little tricky on the inside. And that's going to be guys like Adrian Claiborne, Derek Shelby, Courtney Upshaw, Jack Crawford. I think that's all of them. And then you have like your true edge bodies, and that's going to be like Vic, Tack, Brooks Reed, and I don't know, my mind's slipping, but like those are the guys that are going to be mainly in the rotation. So just kind of look at it like by body type like that.
They put Brooks Reed on the inside sometimes last year in the playoffs, though. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him do it again this year.
I think that was more out of like necessity because they were running out of bodies towards the end of the season.
I think he did a good job with it, though. Didn't he have that 1 sack on Russell Wilson in the 3?
No, I think he was in the 6 in that one. They just shifted. I could be wrong though. Yeah, I don't know the answer to this. I know Poe and Jared are going to play inside, and then how everybody else is deployed is your guess is as good as mine. Like, is Hageman going to be exclusively inside, or is he going to play a little bit outside? What about Shelby? What about Crawford? What about Upshaw? I have no idea. I know Claiborne's going to play inside and outside. I think probably towards the start of the year he'll play a little bit more outside because I think Tack is going to be brought along a little bit more slowly as far as being a regular nickel defense at that DN spot. But then as Tack gets more adjusted, then I think we'll see a lot more of Claiborne playing inside in nickel. And Jared is assuming he's going to be the other primary guy playing beside him. But is Jared going to get a ton of reps in the base? I don't really know. Like, I assume Poe's going to get a ton of reps in the base, but is he going to get a ton of reps in the nickel? I don't know. Like, if he doesn't, is it going to be Claiborne or Crawford or Hageman that's going to be primarily asked to replace him in that role? I don't know. So I have no idea what the Falcons' defensive line rotation is. Basically, when it comes to this team and their defensive line rotation, I just throw my hands up and say, we'll figure it out as we go. And hopefully by the end of the season, which has been the case the last 2 years, they usually figure it out. But, from June to November, it's just like, whatever. We'll find out, I guess. Okay, Dunkaroo ATL asks, do you guys think Tack will be better quicker if we re-sign Freeney versus who he would learn from if we don't?
Scott, since you think Freeney's the defensive line coach.
I think Freeney's the mentor that fucking Vic Beasley needed. Just like Joe Horn was the mentor that Roddy White needed. And, I think Tack – I don't know if Tack needs a guy like Freeney. I think with Bryant Young on the team as the defensive line coach, the Falcons are in a better position than they were with Brian Cox here. That's just my opinion.
I don't think Freeney's coming back at all. I don't think he's in their plans.
I don't think he is either.
I don't know why people keep asking about him.
People want to believe.
For what? Come on. Like, we don't have to pretend he was really good down the stretch. He started off hot, and then I think in the back half of the season, he looked like a 40-year-old dude who needed to be on a pitch count, but the bodies weren't there for him to be on a pitch count, so he had to play more, and he just wasn't really that good.
Besmirching the great name that is Dwight Freeney. How dare you, Charles? I think Charles and I have talked about this, as obviously you guys know, Scott and I have debated this back and forth. I don't think Freeney deserves as much credit for helping Vic out as people give him. I think most of, 80% of Vic's success last year is just facing better matchups and sort of going up against the Rob Havensteins of the world and getting his sacks there, not because Dwight Freeney was this great mentor for him. So I think with Tack, it's, like I'm sure Freeney was great for him, but that's probably like 5% of it. And then the other 15% is whatever. So like, I think with Tack, it's like, I don't care if Freeney's there or not. Like, if he's going to be blocked by Jason Peters and Tyron Smith and Cordy Glenn and all these guys, like, I don't think Freeney being there helping him along is going to help him know how to handle those types of left tackles. I think at the end of the day, people put way too much stock in sort of these, Freeney or anybody laying their magic fingers on these players and making them into better players than they are, when in reality, it just boils down to, are you a better football player than the guy that's lined up across from you? And if you are, then you'll be successful. If you're not, then you probably won't be that successful. So I think for any of these young guys with Tack, it's just going to take him some time to learn how to attack some of these high-end left tackles. And if he winds up playing on the left side, some of these high-end right tackles, which happens for all pass rushers. I think that's a big reason why Beasley was able to find success. He was better able to attack some of these guys, and maybe Freeney helped him prepare better. I'll give Freeney credit for that. But other than that, like, I don't think he needed Dwight Freeney to be able to beat Rob Havenstein for 3 sacks last year. So I don't know. Okay.
Using that thought process, I think we're going to see Tack get a couple sacks against the Patriots then, because all we saw Dwight Freeney do was bull rush against Nate Solder, and he just fucking destroyed him all day. You don't really have to know much to know how to bull rush.
Well, I mean, Solder's biggest issue has always been speed guys. So, Tack's got the speed. So if he can sort of set up some of those moves, he'd give Solder a lot of problems. Okay, Evan Birchfield's next question is, who do you think are the 5 fastest players currently on the roster?
Julio, Gabriel, Trufant, Alford, and Coleman. Tevin, not Derek.
I'm glad you couldn't.
I always forget we have Derek Coleman on the roster because he's a fullback.
Yeah,
how important they are.
I'll go with those 5.
Yeah, I'll put them in order: Gabriel, Tevin, Julio, Alford, Trufant, and if we were putting a 6 in there, I'd say Deion Jones is number 6.
How dare you say that Julio Jones is not the second behind Taylor Gabriel?
I think Julio's faster than Taylor Gabriel. I think Julio's just a bigger body, so it doesn't look like he runs as fast. But watch him on those 75-yard catches, and you're like, holy shit, Julio can bowl.
Look, all those guys we just named can run faster than 99% of the NFL. So, you're really splitting hairs. I think Tevin Coleman is a lot faster than he gets credited for. I think he's faster than Julio Jones.
I think Tevin's fast and gets credit for it too. I just think, like, when you see him miss so many easy plays, like where he just stumbles over his own feet in the open field.
that's why
he's just like, oh, dude, come on! I thought you ran a 4.3. You can't even run in a straight line. So
he's so fast that he stumbles over his own feet because he's got those cartoon feet where he's just like the Fred Flintstone sound effect when he gets going.
AP and I, we were talking, like, imagine how good Tevin would be if he had like any balance at all. Like, imagine how we're talking about, like, a top 5 back in the NFL if he had any balance at all.
Which means he would have 2 top 5 backs.
He'd be like the good Chris Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like 2,000-yard Chris Johnson. That's how good he would be.
That's probably the best comp for him, actually. Probably the best way to use him too.
All right, Evan Birchfield's next question is over under on these predictions. We'll go one by one. Vic Beasley, 15 sacks.
Under,
but not much. I think he's going to be in that 10 to 12 range.
Same.
Well, I'm under. You guys know that was coming. I think Beasley would be like 8 to 11. I think like 9.5, 10.5 sacks is probably where I would probably put his range.
He's going against some bad right tackles again this year.
Yeah, but he's going to get chipped a lot this year, a lot more than he did last year.
Yeah, but then you've got the interior rush this year that they didn't have last year with Poe and Jarrett and all these guys coming on.
I agree with that.
It seems like someone finally figured out how to use Hageman too.
But that's not going to get
one technique.
Sacks, though. That's, other guys will benefit from Vic Beasley getting more attention, but I don't think it's going to help Vic Beasley pad his stats.
I mean, he's going to be going up against Darrell Williams and Matt Khalil for 2 games. Like, I think they're just going to put Beasley against Khalil just to put him against Khalil.
I hope so, because Darrell Williams shut him down last year. So,
I mean, there's just not. I mean, and who's on the fucking Seahawks? Ode Abushi is going to be their starting right tackle right now.
I think Fetty's going to be their right tackle this year.
Fetty can't handle speed. Come on,
Fetty can't handle a lot of things.
Fetty can't really handle shit. And then the Cowboys have who? Chaz Green at right tackle, and what's the Collins there?
Collins is going to be there, I think, and they're going to have Cooper at left guard.
So I don't see – he's not going against a ton of great guys. And then Bobby Massey doesn't do speed well. And then who do we get this year in the fucking AFC? The East? Deion Dawkins, who's a rookie. They chipped the shit out of him in the Super Bowl against Cannon. And then Kelvin Beachum, who – or Ben Ajalana, who I don't know either one of those guys how good they really are. I didn't watch Beachum at all last year. Like, he didn't play a lot of talent.
Yeah, I just think teams are going to be, better prepared to prevent him from, like unlike Denver, who made 0 adjustments in that game after Beasley had 3 sacks. Like, I don't think he's going to sneak up on anybody this year.
Right, and I think with Vic there's going to be a natural regression just because Pro Football Focus, I don't remember the exact number, but he had like by far the most amount of pressures converted into sacks, like by far in the league. But his pressure, like his total number of pressures, wasn't really that high. So he wasn't really getting that many pressures, but when he did get a pressure, he was usually connecting on it and getting home. So I think you're going to see that conversion rate go down and that pressure rate go a little up. So like 8 to 12 sacks, I would be okay with that next season.
Yeah. It's like I think the numbers was like he converted like 30%, and the league average was like 15% or something like that.
It was like 37%.
I think he's going to do a lot better in terms of just getting pressure on the quarterback, though, because he does have the help all throughout the line this year.
I think he'll get a lot of pressures this year. But even if I think like if you do the math or something, like I remember a couple months ago, like doing the math, like if his average goes to the league average, like he'll have like 70 pressures, but only have like 10 sacks or something like that.
And I'd be fine if he gets 10 sacks. Because I still think this team can hit 40.
The next over-under is Grady Jarrett. Over-under 7 sacks for Grady.
I'm going to say under, but I think he can get 5 or 6 this year.
I mean, 7, that's a lot of sacks, man.
That's a lot.
Tackle. I would say, under, maybe 3 or 4.
I think he could have a breakout and get 6.
Yeah, I mean, like, to me, him getting 7, I would go under 2. Him getting 7, I think, is because Beasley's getting a lot of those pressures and forcing guys to step up in the pocket, and Grady's just chilling there and just getting some cleanup sacks and sort of padding his stats a little bit that way. But, yeah, 7 sacks is a lot for an interior guy. Like, I don't even know if Seuss hit that more than 2 or 3 times in his career.
I mean, he threw Shaq Mason around for 2 last year. He's going up against him again. Brian Winters is okay. I mean, the Dallas pairing's good, but John Jerry in New York sucks. I think he's got a shot.
Oh, I found the stat from Sam Monson at Pro Football Focus. Last season, the average NFL edge rusher converted a pressure into the sack 15.2% of the time. Vic Beasley did 29.2% of the time. So, I mean, that's double the average NFL rusher. So I think that number is going to come down, the sack number.
Yeah. Over under for Tack, 5 sacks.
Under.
again, under, but like that's right about where I think he'll do. I think he'll have 4.
Yeah,
Just like Vic Beasley's for rookie season.
I think he's gonna have 3 or 4. Just because first of all, he's gonna have to readjust to playing after that shoulder injury this past season, and then he's just gonna be adjusting to the speed of the game. So I think he'll have like some hustle plays, and he'll get like 1 or 2 hustle sacks, and he'll have 1 or 2 where he just beats him off the edge.
Yeah, I'm going to say under 2, but I do think if Tack does hit that number or goes over, I think it will be because of hustle. We do play a lot of mobile quarterbacks in the league, and, we got Tyrod, we got Jameis, we got Cam, we got Russell, Rodgers, and whatnot. And so I feel like if Jarrett and Beasley do their job and sort of can flush pressure his way, Tack will be in a position where he can sort of clean up and get some hustle sacks and chase some guys down. So if he does wind up going over 5, I do think that would be the reason why. Tyrod is good for like 3 sacks a game just by, not getting rid of the football. So that's an opportunity for Tack or somebody else to sort of, rack up some sacks in that game. Evan Birchfield asked, thoughts on Poe making weight under 340 pounds?
Good. Now when he gets to 330 during the year, and that's what he does the entire time, I'm cool with it. That's where he needs
to be. Congratulations, Don Terry Poe. No one has been richer for being 339 pounds, I guess. So yeah, good for you. Good agent to basically get those benchmarks.
I don't know, man. Snacks is pretty rich for being 339 pounds.
But I don't think he's making $500,000 over it.
No, because he didn't have to. They're going to be more than that if he wanted to be.
Evan Birchfield's next question is, do you think Torgerson has a shot to unseat Schaub as the backup quarterback?
No.
They just signed Schaub to like a fairly sizable deal for a backup quarterback. So no chance.
Schaub's got $5 million guaranteed. Schaub's making 5 or 10 times the amount in guaranteed money as Torgerson has on his overall contract. They ain't cutting Schaub. Boy.
That's 5 years. The Falcons bring in a veteran quarterback, and he's terrible. And we're always looking at, the Dominique Davis or whomever of the world sort of taking their job. But I don't think that's going to be the case with Matt Schaub. I think if Torgerson does wind up having a good summer, then the Falcons will just wind up keeping 3 quarterbacks as opposed to cutting Schaub for one of those guys. I would be very shocked if they cut Schaub for any reason. Charlie Rogers 68 asks, what are the chances the Falcons have 4 tight ends active for most games?
None. Did they have 4 tight ends active for any game last year?
No.
Last year, not 2015 either, so no.
No. Will they have 4 tight ends on the roster? I'm probably going to say yeah, but active during games, only 3.
Yeah, I mean, the 3rd tight end is only really needed for like 10 snaps, really.
I mean, unless like DJ Tialavea moves to fullback, then you could have like 3 tight ends and a fullback tight end type guy. But other than that, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen. So 0% chance. Charlie Rogers' next question is, do you have any predictions on veteran cuts before the season?
Last time we did this, I don't know. I was on this, but it was on Twitter. Last time I guessed that, or last time I tried this, I guess that they're going to cut Joe Hawley. So
that was a good call. That's a weird call, but that was a good call.
I'm going to say that Adrian Claiborne. Let's say he's
that's the one that's been standing out to me too. Because if they're like, well, we like Crawford and we want to have Grady Jarrett and like see what we can do with the 3-man rotation of Hageman, Poe, and Jarrett at defensive tackle, where is Crawford's real role on this team? He can't really play Leo. He can't really play like strong side end because that involves playing on the left a lot of the time. And dude can't rush from the left, so where do you put him?
Yeah, just spitballing because I just look at it and I see there's a lot of bodies like right there, and I think someone's gonna have to get cut, whether it's like Upshaw or Claiborne. I don't think they could financially cut Shelby and have it make a lot of sense. So I don't know.
I'm gonna throw a name out there, Brian Poole. That'd be a surprise cut. I could see it happening with Collins getting an expanded nickel role and just other guys beating him out, like Kazee and King and Collins and Goodwin and Olatoye just being better. I could see Poole being an odd man out and off the team this year.
Okay. I don't have any sort of surprise cuts. I think, if there's going to be a surprise cut, it's going to be because someone got hurt in training camp, tweaked their groin and basically missed the entire summer. And then the Falcons are like, hey, we don't really need you if you're not going to be healthy till October or whatever. So I don't really have a pick. Charlie Rogers asked, I think Freeman is a top 5 running back right now. Thank you, Charlie. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. Lately, just like with the whole like Michael Jordan, LeBron debates, I'm just not really interested in who people think their top 5 is. It's not interesting conversation to me. But yeah, sure, he's a top 5 back. Now, how would you feel if I said he wasn't a top 5 back? But so like, who would be the top 5? Zeke, Le'Veon, David Johnson. And then
Shady, maybe?
Shady. I think all those guys are better than Devontae. So, yeah, maybe he's at 5, but I think he's still a step below those guys.
Yeah. I mean, if at worst he's like 6 or something, if you're a DeMarco Murray stan or something, maybe you put him at 7. I don't know. But other than that, yeah.
Yeah, there's Zeke, Le'Veon, Johnson. And then even to me, like Shady McCoy is getting old and up there. Like, he's better when he's healthy, but has he played 16 games in a season the last 3 years?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if Devontae's a top 5 fantasy back just because how much time he splits with Tevin Coleman, but in terms of top 5, do or die, go out and get me 5 yards on 3rd and 4. Yeah, I put him up there. Evan Birchfield asks, how would you currently rank the top 5 NFL teams heading into the season?
Falcons.
Split hot 5.
Hot fire. Thank you for getting that reference.
I think there's tier 1, and there's one team in tier 1, and that's the Patriots.
Clearly.
And then in tier 2, in the next tier, I would put the Cowboys, the Falcons, the Steelers.
Come on, Charles.
Maybe the Packers.
No.
What?
The Raiders.
Oh, come on. Wait, look, I want to see.
Man, that Raiders defense is rough.
I mean, the Falcons defense sucks too, but
the Falcons have at least an average defense, and they stepped up in the fucking playoffs.
Okay.
Yeah, but with the Raiders, I don't know. I need to see. Their linebackers still suck. There are Raiders fans clamoring for David Harris, who just got cut from the Jets. We're not that desperate.
Okay. I mean, look, I think it's the Patriots, Falcons, Steelers, Raiders, and Cowboys. Those are the top 5. I don't, the Packers, get in that mix when Aaron Rodgers becomes Aaron Rodgers again. But other than that, they've proven over the last 5 or 6 years that they're always on that tier below. I can't get the dismantling of them in the NFC Championship game out of my head. It always seems like every year in the postseason they lose in embarrassing fashion.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for me to put them back in that top tier where all those other teams, not obviously the Patriots are going to win the AFC, but it's between the Raiders and Steelers. Maybe one of those teams, if they get hot, can give them a real run in the AFC Championship game. And then in the NFC, I do feel like Dallas, assuming there's no sophomore slump from, Dak and Zeke, and the Falcons, assuming that they're, the defense is able to pick up some of the slack that the offense, gives this year from not being as prolific as they were a year ago. I feel like those two teams are a notch above. Maybe if Eddie Lacy looks like, peak Eddie Lacy, then maybe I might throw Seattle in that mix as well. But other than that, I don't really see anybody else that's that high level talking Super Bowl. Okay. Charlie Rogers, I've been a fan since 1976, and I believe this is truly the best and deepest roster Falcons have ever had. What are your thoughts?
I think talent-wise, coaching-wise, I'll agree. And I think it has a lot to do with the coaches know that they've got a plan for each player. It's not, hey, we're going to draft this guy because he's good, like what Mike Smith used to do. Oh, I like this guy. We'll figure out a role for him. It's, we want this guy because he can do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to throw him out there and do X, Y, and Z. We're going to take Tack McKinley. He can rush outside, and he's going to rush from the outside. We're going to take Vic Beasley. We're going to line him up on the left and the right, and he's going to rush from the outside. Oh, well, he had issues with the right side. We're going to throw him on the left. He can at least do that for right now. They've got a plan for everybody. We're going to take Jalen Collins. We're going to play him in the nickel on the outside so we can have Alfred on the inside or Trufant on the inside. Like, they've got a plan. They know how they want to use these guys. And that is just as important as having the raw talent that a lot of these guys have. Like, I didn't see Deion Jones as a middle linebacker in the NFL. But Dan Quinn saw him there. Jeff Ulbrich saw him there. And boom, he's easily one of the better middle linebackers in the NFL, even as a rookie. So I think I'll agree with you that it is one of the deepest teams I've ever seen. And I think the coaching staff has a lot more to do with it than the players themselves do. Because they have plans for each one of these guys to maximize what they do well and minimize what they don't.
Yeah, I think this roster is definitely talented. Just looking at it on paper, it looks fantastic. But still, I would like to temper expectations a little bit. Just because when I made a spider chart the other day for the Falcons defense, and I didn't realize, like, I knew it was shaky to start the season, but I didn't realize, like, wow, like, they actually sucked. Like they really did suck. And I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves with saying, this is going to be a top 10 unit. I still would like to see it happen before I get all the way excited about it. But definitely there's a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism, a lot of guys who have proven production like Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Desmond Trufant and Alfred. But I still think we need to see it actually happen before we get too excited about it.
Welcome to the club, Charles. It just took you 6 months to get there.
Yeah, it took a epic Super Bowl collapse for me to go full heel again, and now I hate them.
I think this is definitely the deepest roster the Falcons have had. I would, the way I would explain it is if you looked at the top 10 players on this team, I don't think you could say the 10 best players on this roster right now are better than, say, the 10 best players on the roster in 98 or 2012 or any other year where you would sit here and make a point of comparison. But I would say that, guys from like 11 through 25 are probably much better on this year's roster, certainly in comparison to, say, a roster like 2012, where once you got past, like, your 10th or 11th best player, you started getting well into sort of the Steven Nicholases of the world of role players, as opposed to, this roster where, I don't even know if Taylor Gabriel's in one of the 12 or 13 best players on the team right now, but, he's really good. So it's one of those things where, like, similar to what Scott said, I feel like even though there's a bunch of role players on this team, I do feel like those roles are well defined, as opposed to previous teams where it seemed like they had role players of similar skill sets, but they just sort of were asked to do things that they weren't really great at doing, or they were put in situations, with a changing league where, you got a Curtis Lofton who's, fine role player or whatnot, but isn't the guy that you really want ideally as an every down player. You could argue that,
If this was the 80s, Lofton would still be playing busting heads.
Yeah, but the point I would make is, like, you can argue for their type of play. Deion Jones isn't that much better than Curtis Lofton was, but because the type of play that Deion Jones is really good at meshes with how the league is played today, like it makes him better than Curtis Lofton, who was, would have been great in 2003, but in 2010, when the league had sort of shifted from the Sean Alexanders and the Amon Greens of the world being the best player on your offense to that being quarterbacks and wide receivers, then he sort of, he was born basically 5 to 10 years too late to really shine. Okay, Charlie Rogers asked, does Matt Bryant have any competition this year? He's a top 2 to 3 kicker, but competition never hurt anyone.
I mean, the Falcons have this guy named Mike Meyer on the roster. I don't know if he's any good, but I mean, let's see.
Technically he has competition. I don't know if it's real competition. We'll see. But there is another dude on the roster that kicks.
I mean, I'm about to look up his college stats because I don't really know anything about Mike Meyer.
Well, while you do that, Scott, we'll move on to the next question. Unless, Charles, you had some great insights into.
Never heard of Mike Meyer.
He missed 6 field goals his senior year. He missed 4 his junior year.
He's not real. Let's move on.
Yeah, he's not worth worrying about. Don't worry about Mike Meyer. Dude sucks.
All right. Leovani Lasada, John asked, give us your opinion about the Bucs this season. How do we stop their offense?
Really good pass rush. You put Alford on put Alford against Mike Evans, and you put Trufant on Deshaun Jackson, and then for the rest of it, just rush the passer and stop the run. Like, I'm not worried about O.J. Howard this year. I'm worried about O.J. Howard next year, the year after that, because that's when I think he's going to be really good. But I think this year he's still going to have that adjustment to the pros.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty simple. Hit the quarterback, Yeah. Jameis loves going deep. They have receivers that are really good at going deep now that they have Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans. I think Cam Newton's the only quarterback in the league the last 2 years who's attempted more deep throws than Jameis Winston has. And it's like by 3 passes or something, some really small number. So, because they're going to play that dirt cutter offense and that vertical offense, they hit the quarterback. That's basically, we didn't do that in week 1. We did do that in week 9 in the outcomes of the game. So their offensive line has some question marks. They're talking about moving Ali Marpet to center. Maybe that'll help neutralize Dontari Poe in that game, but that does free up opportunities for guys like Grady Jarrett and Vic Beasley, Tack, Claiborne, Crawford, whoever else, to sort of feast on some of their other lesser offensive linemen. Vic did a great job against DeMar Dotson in that Week 9 game. Whoever's the right end, whether it's Claiborne, Reed, or Tack, not very good. See the great J.R. Sweezy is going to be starting at guard for them. That's another opportunity for Grady Jarrett to get some production there. And so I feel like, if you can hit the quarterback, then they can't get those big plays. But if you can't, then, that opens up a can of worms, because I don't know if you got Trufant on whoever you got on Mike Evans, unless it's Trufant, I don't know. I don't trust anybody up around the quarters against Deshaun Jackson. I love me some Robert Alford, but that's at least one 45-yard pass interference play waiting to happen.
That's why I think you got to put Trufant on them, and then roll coverage towards an Evans, like roll coverage with Allen and Alford towards Evans. I've always had this thought with like Calvin Johnson, right? Calvin Johnson's a badass fucking receiver. But if you're gonna double him anyway, why not take your number one corner and cover the number two receiver and shut down the number two guy? Same thought would apply with Tampa Bay. That's why you put Desmond Trufant against Deshaun Jackson. Plus, Trufant doesn't get beat by speed the way Alfred does. So at least you'll have two guys on Evans.
Fair enough. That's basically what the Patriots did in the Super Bowl. Last question from Leovani Lasada. He asked, where will our preseason games be played at? Will either of you two attend week two? Will either of you three, I guess now, Charles is here, attend week two's game?
No, man. I was looking at the ticket prices like when they first got listed. It is just unbelievable. I'm 23, man. I can't afford to go to the Falcons game in Atlanta right now. But I think me and my friend.
Week four is that sweet spot, man.
I think
Buffalo tickets aren't that bad.
I'm trying to go to Charlotte for that game. The tickets were like $75, so I think that's going to be the move. No, I'm not going to a Falcons game this year, probably.
Dude, Charlotte's worth going to.
Yeah, I used to live there, so it's a dope city.
I really like their stadium. And you won't get messed with by Panthers fans, I promise you. They don't care enough.
Okay. Seems like you're challenging them now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He said that, not me.
I've been in their stadium wearing my Tuggle jersey multiple times. Never had a crass word said to me.
Oh,
yeah, look,
harassing the Panthers fans.
They're not like the Raiders fans where you were guaranteed to get into a fight or get stabbed. Yeah,
you get stabbed if you go to Oakland.
Yeah,
I'm not saying you in Oakland.
You get stabbed wherever Raiders fans are. There's actual stats that basically say the arrest rates wherever the Raiders travel to, whatever city, go up like 400% or something like that on the day of games. So glad the Falcons don't have the Raiders on their schedule this year. I will not be attending the Week 2 game. If I'm going to try to make it down to Atlanta, it'll probably be late in the season after Thanksgiving, maybe that Vikings game, maybe that Thursday night game with the Saints. It will depend on, maybe me winning the lottery or something like that. So I'll keep an open mind to it. But in all likelihood, I probably won't be making the trip down to Atlanta. As for where the preseason games are going to be played at, I'm assuming that the stadium is going to open on time for that Arizona game in Week 3?
It has to open on time. And the shit they were worried about was closing the roof, and they showed they could close the frame of the roof, so they'll be fine.
Yeah. So, I don't know. If they can't play it there, then, whether they play it in Athens or Chattanooga or something, Orlando, I have no idea. But
they haven't demolished the dome yet. They could still just reopen the dome for a couple games. That's worst case scenario.
There you go. All right, guys, that's our show. We appreciate Charles for coming on and hanging out with us for an hour and a half. This is way past Charles' bedtime.
Oh, actually, it's not today. In an hour, I'm going to be on 92.9 talking to some Falcons minicamp, just bullshitting the hell out of it. So if you're interested in that, at 11:20, I'll be on 92.9.
All right. Well, I'm glad we could be your practice run.
92.9 is going to have them on for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Whatever gets you through. So, guys, appreciate everybody tuning in. We know we will be back in 2 weeks. We'll be back on Facebook Live. We weren't on today just because our producer had a conflict, and so we couldn't schedule that. So enjoy the Hangouts on YouTube. We'll promote it. You guys can submit questions as all these people did on Twitter. At Falcons PFC is the Twitter handle. I'm FalcFan. Scott is Karasik S. Check out Charles for Verts. Setting Edge podcast is still going strong with y'all's NFL preview stuff, right?
Yeah, Justice had finals this weekend through this week, so we got to take a little break, but we'll be back tomorrow with the Cowboys, and then on Friday we're having Taylor Rooks on, fellow tortured Falcons fan, on the podcast.
There you go. So Facebook, Falcon Central Radio, you can leave comments there. Subscribe, like, all that type of stuff. YouTube as well. That's where you can find the show. You guys know the drill by now. hopefully you guys know the drill by now to get those questions in and whatnot and other ways of sharing on our platform, profootballcentral.com, iTunes, ratings, all that stuff. So that's it. We'll be back in 2 weeks to talk, I guess, training camp battles or, whatever is happening the first week of July. I don't know. We'll find out.
Strong ending there.